Stand by.
On the morning shift.
Anything could happen.
Sudbury News Talk on the morning shift.
All right, everyone. Good morning. So, welcome to Sudbury News Talk on the morning shift. I'm AJ Walsh. Glad to be here with you. I'm glad that you are here with us this morning as we get started with our new setup in our new studio. So we are happy to come to you live, no matter where it is. But it's always the same time, 7:30, between 7:30 and 8:30 each weekday morning on CKLU 96.7 FM. Where we just got everything set up here. Took us about, I guess, altogether an hour. So it wasn't that painful. And yeah, we're ready to go. Everything looks like it's working, and everything looks like it's, we're good to go. So it's just new and have to get used to the new setup and arrangement. So it's not, there's probably going to be a couple glitches, hiccups here and there. It is what it is. Can't do anything about it. And, but we're here. I guess we're resilient, and we just keep moving forward, no matter what. And, yeah, so things are in different place. So I got to reach around things and stuff, but yeah, but you wouldn't know anything different if you were listening on CKLU 96.7 FM or streaming at cklu.ca. But you might notice if you're watching us on facebook.com/Sudbury News or youtube.com/Sudbury News. And even then, it's not that much of a deal. So we have, news, weather, sports for you today from local news headlines. And we also want to bring you a little bit of a deep dive today to do with, the state of our government, basically, whether it's in Canada or worldwide. We have a bit of an interview from Joel Skousen. We kind of gave a bit of a teaser there yesterday to do with that. And we'll end the show with that, some unbiased reporting and take on what's happening in the Middle East. We listened to an interview yesterday with somebody from England, from Great Britain, talking about, refugees and the West and how things have gone in the past and what that means for these countries and maybe why it was happening and why aren't other countries taking in massive refugees. Although there was a comment from somebody yesterday saying, look into the top 10 countries that take in refugees. And yes, I was very surprised. Out of all the Western countries, only Germany was on that list. And I think the idea of refugees versus immigrants is one thing, right? So refugees happen to be, when there's a war and everyone's displaced, they'll usually go to the country that's kind of next to them. So you'll notice the countries that are near turmoil end up having the most refugees, right? And but here in this case, we don't see any of the neighboring countries wanting to take in those from Gaza, which is interesting. Anyways, we'll have a little bit about that. We'll end the show with someone who's in the know of things like that. And really, it's unbiased. It's not emotional news. You'll be all the more educated by listening to Joel Skousen at the end of the show. We also have, a little bit of a deep dive. John Stossel will take us into, government overreach and the welfare program, and has it happened? Has it really helped? Are we as moving into more of a welfare state, big government helping everybody all the time? Does it really help when government gets involved? And then we'll look at our own country and see a few recent examples in the housing crisis for one and how the government's handling that. There'll be a committee questioning who's going to be here. Let's see here. So, of course, it's the last video I click on. So it's a briefing with the president of the chief executive officer of the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation. And you'll want to hear that and listen to how government responds to the common sense questions of everyday Canadians. And we'll just have to ask ourselves, what's the role of big government? Do they help us? Is it in more of a communist or socialist big government society that we're getting more and more to be like? Is it beneficial for us as a citizen? Anyways, so that'll be more of the deep dive for a little bit later. We'll also cover local sports news, and we'll start off with the weather. So make sure to like, share, subscribe, follow, but mainly comment. This is your conversation on your station, CKLU 96.7 FM. We'll be back with the weather right after this. A little sports update, your comments, and much more right after the weather. Okay, currently it is -8. Yes, and we had a Christmas Halloween yesterday. It was a white Halloween. And so I guess anything can happen at this point. -8 feels like -12, however, mainly clear, but after a dumping. A mix of sun and cloud you can expect today. 30% chance of flurries this morning, and high of 0. The wind chill will feel like -10 in the morning. Tonight, mainly cloudy with a 40% chance of flurries and a low of -3, wind chill near -7. Now, tomorrow, cloudy, 40% chance of flurries or rain. So it's a 40% chance of flurries or rain showers, changing to 40% chance of rain showers near noon. Flurries and rain expected tomorrow, 40% chance. The high will only be +3. The low will be +1. Again, that's your Thursday. So for Friday, 40% chance of rain or flurries. So similar to Thursday, but then high of +6 will be the difference. Saturday, 40% chance of showers, high of 7. 40% chance of showers with a high of 2 on Sunday. Monday, again, chance of snow, 40% chance with a high of 0. And then cloudy on Tuesday. So pretty messy. It's white. It's pretty much winter weather. Anything can happen now. Look at your satellite for those on the radio. Just a little clearing over the North Shore, along the North Shore, all the way up to Wawa kind of thing, and then pretty much to Sudbury. But everything else is cloudy. And that's your weather, brought to you by SudburyWeather.ca. We'll be back with a little sports update, your comments, news headlines, a deep dive into why big government right after this. All right, your Sudbury Wolves are in action tonight at the Sudbury Community Arena, so make sure to get out there and support them. Watch the game. I will be on the other side of the call with our broadcasting at CKLU, where we broadcast the game. So if you're not able to make it, I'll make sure that the game is up on CKLU, working with the team at the Sudbury Arena to make sure you can at least listen to it. I know a lot of times Eastlink also has the game on if you're not able to make it, but nothing beats getting out and actually being there for the game. So this was right from the Sudbury Wolves media, but they mentioned that the game is tomorrow night because the video was made yesterday. However, it's tonight. There's no question about it.
A rivalry has spanned Highway 17 and defined hockey in Northern Ontario. North Bay versus Sudbury is the embodiment of the bad blood and competitive battles that are a part of hockey and Canadian heritage. Another chapter of the Highway 17 rivalry gets written tomorrow night when the troops take the ice against the hometown pack at Sudbury's very own heritage building, The Den. Who will be the hero? Who will set the tone? Who will add their name to the history of this storied rivalry? Get your tickets now and pack The Den when the Wolves host the Battalion at 7:05.
Nice move by Goyette. Here's Dvorsky driving. He scores!
Okay, we're back. So make sure to get your tickets for the Sudbury Wolves tonight, facing off against the North Bay Battalion, a chance to redeem themselves after the 5-4 loss on Sunday in North Bay. A little take on Canadian heritage there by the Sudbury Wolves. Interesting, right? Because the Sudbury Arena is pretty much, a historic building at this point, and there's a lot to do with Sudbury's heritage for sure. So with that, first to the party this morning on Facebook is Judy. So good morning, Judy. Thanks for being with us. Also, Monique is good morning with some hand clapping going on. Hope everyone had a safe and wonderful Halloween last night. And Janet joining us this morning. Good morning, Janet. Thanks for being with us. And Denise, good morning from Espanola. Morning, Vin. And hope you guys did have a safe and good Halloween last night. And it's November already. I can't believe how fast the time is going. They pushed them into sovereign countries. Okay, that's about our little rant we had this morning about the people who are displaced and countries who've taken people in, which we will end the show with. Joel Skousen will be talking about that. Danica, good morning from Capriel. Heart emoji. Feeling the love here. Much appreciated. In my new setup, new studio, out of necessity. Olivia Chow, Mayor of Toronto, in the news yesterday, complaining the feds aren't helping with the homeless refugees in Toronto. Exactly. It's, so when you bring a lot of people into a country and you don't have the infrastructure to handle it, it's going to create problems. And so who decided or who allowed or who makes possible the amount of refugees we have coming into the country? The federal government, right? So obviously she's after the federal government to say, hey, but it's all part of a big government. Olivia Chow is also, she's NDP, right? She believes in big government and more of a communist style government where the government pays for everything. And so what would be better than having a bunch of people from other countries on our welfare system? And you may be surprised to hear me say that, but I will be talking more about that very shortly. And you'll see that, yes, there are some advantages for governments having a lot of their citizens on welfare. And you would think, no, that can't be, but it is. It's the truth. And we'll explain it a little bit later. Belinda says, good morning. Don't carry your mistakes around with you. Instead, place them under your feet and use them as stepping stones to rise above them. Heart emoji. Love it. Belinda, thank you so much for that. David, good morning. Take care. Stay safe. Same to you. And can't wait till you say, I'm back at home and all is good. So to a quick recovery. And as usual, Marianne from Barrie liking and sharing our video, and that is greatly appreciated. So if you're able to like the video and share it, obviously, if people are looking at the video and they say, oh, there's only 2 likes, this must not be very good or whatever. I don't know. And we seem to have a moderate amount of people on our show each and every day. Our community has kind of risen. I don't think Facebook is really doing anything to promote it at all. I think the only people who come because they know the show is on and they just want to participate or listen to it or watch it. It's definitely not promoted by any of the social medias. If anything, I'm surprised we're still here due to Bill C-11, Bill 18, the Online News Act, and the CRTC's governance of their being the overlords to see who is allowed to have a show and who's not. What is Canadian content and what is not, and that's very ambiguous and very abstract in the wording of what it means. And so I'm actually just surprised we're still here for that matter. So we'll enjoy it while we have it. Getting mom out of the house to work was a big deal in our country. The government has robbed us blind. So I think you're alluding to the fact that we need two incomes now in order to make ends meet. And moms are no longer in the house with children. And that's basically a breakdown of the micro family, which is a Marxist ideology, is to break down the family and later to be known as the nuclear family. So that's what we see. We see many of our leaders are of the Marxist ideology, if not most of them. And that's what we see in our society. So this is Belinda, all of these homeless immigrants that the government brought into the country should be housed with every politician in Canada. That'd be a great idea. There's no doubt about it. And freedom of speech does matter. 100%. So speaking of that, let's just dive right in today and see what we can find with making sense of the world that we live in. So Laurentian University, students at Laurentian University are voting this week on whether to continue a universal student bus pass service that paid out roughly $1.1 million to the City of Greater Sudbury coffers in the previous school year. The U-Pass service was started in 2006 and is automatically added to the fees for every student at Laurentian. So back in 2006, the students paid $135 each per year for the service, which with the passage of 17 years, the same service now costs $225 per student for this school year, up from $218 per student the previous school year. So that price is a significant discount to the more than 600 students. So a discount. So each student would be paying more than $600 if they were to pay it on their own for the same service. And the transit passes, so they're bought directly from the city. The SGA representatives kind of make this happen, and students are able to opt out of the U-Pass service, but only under strict circumstances. It's not strict for them to opt out of supporting CKLU or the paper at Laurentian. That's very easy to do, and not surprised. But that should be brought back at some point, and students should be more involved, having their say on community radio, community and campus radio, and get involved and learn what it's about, have a podcast of their own kind of thing. I think that should be integrated more into their university experience. Okay, that story was coming to you from Sudbury.com. Nothing else seems very much pressing from their headlines today. Glencore says Nickel Rim South Mine in Sudbury slowing down but not closing altogether. We had that on the show the other day. This is from CBC. It's been a good run for Glencore's Nickel Rim South Mine in Sudbury, but for the time being, the mine is coming to an end. Mining there will be coming to an end. Pedestrian involved in a new Sudbury collision. Wow, there's just so many of those. This is coming from the Sudbury Star. More and more pedestrians being hit in the city. Miles chiming in here says Stephen and Dave have not been on on here for a few days. Well, Stephen was actually on yesterday towards the end of the show, just making sure that we weren't accusing people that were involved in terrorism of having a different color of skin, which we didn't do, which all people can be affected by or be involved in terrorism. He used the IRA as an example. And so I don't know what he was insinuating, thinking that we would think that people with a different color of skin can only be terrorists. Nothing like that was ever said. Terrorism is terrorism. Hate is hate. It doesn't have a color of skin. But yeah, he came on yesterday towards the end of the show. So Denise says Pierre Trudeau in 1971 gave everyone Visa cards and our country drunk on debt using cards. Yeah, I mean, even we used to print our own money before 1971. 1971 was very a turning point in Canadian economic history as we went with the centralized banking system where central banks, no one to do with Canada, owned our money, and we pay them now exorbitant amounts of debt, of interest on debt, which was unnecessary, but it's a decision that was made in 1971 to do that. Most of the world made the same decision as the banking cartel took over the world. And they were gunning it in the 70s for sure. Started in about 1913 with the Federal Reserve changing over to the central banking system. And it took us, almost 60 years later to do that. So meth addiction controlled Sudbury man's life. He stole to feed his habit and is sentenced to house arrest followed by a curfew. So as the new billboard campaign comes out to not stigmatize people that are addicted, this is something that happens when some people who are addicted then turn to crime in order to feed the addiction. And so I don't know if you can then unstigmatize crime too. But we talked about the billboard campaign to not stigmatize addiction. And we talked about that goes along with the ideology of harm reduction as opposed to recovery. And again, right? So, okay, even if you don't stigmatize or you try not to say that it's wrong, you're not wrong for doing it. You love the person, not the actions, right? You love the person, but not the actions that they do. So you don't stigmatize the person. The person doing the drugs that they're consuming is an action. The person you love. So, and that's recovering. You want that person to not do those actions because they're not serving that person very well. This meth addict, this coming from the Sudbury Star, if you want to read the story, was arrested for stealing and now is under house arrest and a curfew. And the next time he steals, he might go to jail, and so is that serving him in any way, shape, or form, right? Positively? Common sense needs to come back in our thinking, in the way that we create policies and govern ourselves. It's a slippery slope, and I don't even know if we'll be able to come back from it, actually. I remember when bank cards first came out, not everyone got one. That's true. Nowadays, it's tap, 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 everywhere you go. They also started taxing food, then clothing, and then we okay, I'm not sure. We stayed shamed in debt, and they know they had us. Okay, so yeah, there are certain entities that gain from people being poor, gain from people being on welfare, gain from people being in debt, and they're huge, and they're big multi-billion-dollar outfits, including our governments. They do gain a lot from having a welfare state. It means the people are dependent on them for things. And there is something to be said about power and staying in power and having people dependent on you. And unfortunately, welfare is a way to do that. Comes in different forms. Some of us still remain debt-free, not always easy, in a society built on debt reliance, for sure. So lots of comments coming in here. I still today manage my own money. I fought direct withdrawals. It's matching how we are forced by the silent. And Miles says, so community volunteers at the bus stop, you see community volunteers at the bus stop daily. And with people who have OD kits to give away to the addicts downtown. So community volunteers at the bus stop, every day you see giving out OD kits to help the addicts who are downtown. That's true, and that's the society we've come to be. So either we become enablers, and we want that to continue, because it's only going to grow if you don't do anything about it. If you just say, "Oh, it's don't be too hard on the idea of people doing drugs. It's not their fault, and we just need to keep giving them more drugs and make sure they're safe." And and if they get too depressed and we can offer them a way out, and that's medical assistance in dying. It's okay. We have a plan. It's okay. Okay, that's so Belinda, and that's how you keep slaves. You keep them indebted to the government regime, and they have to be happy till they squeeze every last penny out of us. Okay, they're not happy until they squeeze every last penny out of us. And I apologize for my site in the news studio. The lighting isn't as good. So lucky everyone else. I already had a hard enough time reading the comments, and now it's going to be interesting. So this is great, but a Band-Aid fix for the addicts downtown for sure. Addicts downtown, addicts everywhere. Just whoever's addicted to drugs. It's just, I don't know. I don't know. Like, is it a good thing? Like, do we want to sustain that? Do we want to help people continue in their addictions, or do we want to help them get off? Like, what is the end goal here? Let's just ask ourselves that. So who's the, I think you meant to say who's the dealer, and that matters. Do some research. Okay. For sure. Yeah. So maybe Denise, it is hard to, before you hit send or whatever, just make sure what's being said. It's hard. I can't read even when it's clear. So if you could do that, I'd appreciate it, just to make sure that before you hit send, just make sure that you did kind of a look-see, a double check on that. But we're right on topic anyways. We might as well dive right into some of these videos today. First, starting with John Stossel on the state of the United States. You would think the United States is, more free. It's a free market, capitalism, all that stuff. But he makes the argument of how in the United States they're becoming a welfare state, and the fact of how the government gains and why they want people on welfare, right? And then we'll look at our own country, and then we'll do a deep dive into the state of the world, an interview with Joel Skousen. So we'll be back right after this. Enjoy.
24 million adults suffer from food insecurity.
Wow, Americans suffer food insecurity.
Food insecurity in the richest country in the world.
Many families are facing potential hunger.
Really? Americans are hungry?
Food insecurity is not the same thing as hunger.
Rachel Sheffield researches what the government calls food insecurity. Turns out it doesn't mean hunger.
It means that they had to rely on cheaper foods, store brand alternatives to name brands, or that they had to reduce the variety.
The USDA admits it. For most food-insecure households, the inadequacies were in the form of reduced quality, not insufficient quantity. The government's food insecurity numbers come from a survey that asks questions like, did you ever cut the size of your meal because there wasn't enough money? From that, the government claims 33 million Americans live in food-insecure households. They always want to create a crisis.
Yeah, government programs tend to want to keep themselves going.
As a result, their handouts harm the very people they're meant to help. Before government's war on poverty began, Americans were lifting themselves out of poverty. Once welfare checks started, the poverty rate kept dropping for a few years, but then progress stopped because handouts encouraged people to be dependent. Our government did something remarkable. It created a new class of dependent people. And now government twists itself into knots to perpetuate that by calling even obese people food insecure. The New York Times used this photo in its latest report on vulnerable people suffering, waiting for food stamps.
Americans are consuming too many calories rather than too few.
And adults labeled food insecure are more likely to be obese.
The nation's obesity epidemic is growing.
So activists promote another myth. Poor people are overweight because they can't afford to eat healthy. That's why they eat junk food.
You know, junk food is cheap.
But that's another myth. Healthy food is actually a little cheaper.
Yeah, there's this widespread belief that junk foods are more affordable, but things like chips and cookies, soda pop, fast food, those are actually relatively expensive sources of calories.
They sure are. We compared the cost where I live. Healthy food like oatmeal, peanut butter, bananas, and eggs cost much less per calorie than a McDonald's McDouble or Coke or chips.
Don't give me that horse that eating healthy is expensive. It isn't. Go to a supermarket. They're throwing the vegetables at you.
This comedian gets it.
McDonald's is the reason why I'm out of shape. I would have got a salad, but you didn't have the option, so I was like, well, I guess I got to get 52 Big Macs.
This community went 10 years without a place for folks to buy good food.
Michelle Obama promoted another myth, food deserts. She said eating healthy is much harder for poor people who
live in what we call food deserts.
Her claim got lots of play.
If a mom wanted to buy some fresh fruit for their kids' lunch, that means she would have to get on a bus.
But so-called food deserts turns out to be a government trick. When officials designate them, they deviously ignore small businesses and food stands. In the neighborhood where Michelle Obama gave her food desert speech, even the New York Times reported that this man was selling food out of this truck. He sold healthy food like blueberries, onions, cucumbers, sweet potatoes. He wasn't counted in the government food desert surveys. But the media still talk about food deserts.
For 1 in 6 Americans, good food is either too expensive, too far, or both.
The media find deprivation everywhere. The new victims are college students.
About 60% of undergraduate and graduate students are food insecure.
Its studies show most students gain weight in college. It's bizarre that when obesity is the much bigger problem that activists and government hype food insecurity. But of course,
that creates the rationale for expanding food assistance programs, for expanding the welfare system.
Providing people with access to nutritious and affordable food.
Expanding the welfare system seems to be the government's main goal.
The federal government, which runs the SNAP program, announced an increase in SNAP benefits.
We've spent more on the war on poverty than all the military wars combined in the United States without any success.
Actually, it's been a success in one way.
It increases dependence on the federal government.
So the handouts are good for bureaucrats who dole out the money and politicians who get to sound like good guys.
They want to know how we're going to put food on their table. Yes.
But these programs promote dependency, which hurts people. What politicians should promote is what Denzel Washington promotes here.
Hard work works.
Remember, before welfare, working was lifting people out of poverty.
Work also has a lot of other benefits. It builds a greater sense of community. It gives people access to resources, friend networks that can help them improve in their lives.
Working really hard is what successful people do.
Encouraging self-sufficiency is so much better than pushing government aid.
Thanks to John Stossel for that. I really appreciate his type of reporting, as I've said on the show many, many, many times. And he just has a way of getting the truth in through journalism, through finding out what's really going on, what journalism used to be. And today I'm glad that he continues as an independent journalist and he's not tied to anything, so he has to bow down to any corporate interests or government interests or anything like that. He can actually just report the news. And so did you hear what Kamala Harris said there? People are wondering how we are going to put food on their tables. So that should throw a red flag up right away. So people are wondering how the government is going to put food on their tables. Right? So it's all right there in what she said. I'm not wondering how the government's going to put food on my table. I think why would I depend on the government to want to put food on my table? I mean, why would you want to put something as serious as eating every day in the hands of someone like government? Like, do I want them to be responsible for me eating? No. Right? But they feel it's their responsibility to put food on your table. No, that's not their responsibility. It's their responsibility to make a climate out there to make sure that you can be able to do that for yourself. And anyone who's fallen through the cracks, which should always be only a limited amount of people, that there are people who care, that will make sure that these people aren't going to go hungry. If you look at Western society in the last 150 years, people didn't go hungry here. We have support systems, and it didn't have to be the government. We have community-run food banks. Churches do all kinds of things to help the poor and the needy. But as soon as the government gets involved, and then we start looking to the government and we start asking them to solve all of our problems, that's when things get very communist. The government shouldn't be solving everyone's problems. It should be setting the playing field, a fair playing field, so that way the free market can do its thing and take care of its own, and it will. And be there as maybe a regulating authority or making sure that laws are being kept and things like that. But this idea that the government's going to dole out all this money and support everybody, it just makes an unfair playing field. You give one business $1 million and you don't give its competitors $1 million. And who bases why that one competitor got $1 million and the other one didn't? What the heck's up with that? All these economic development corporations that are government run, and everyone just comes to the, to feed off of the sow of the government kind of thing. It's just not beneficial for anybody. And so now let's look into our own country. Here's a briefing with the president and chief executive officer of Canada's Mortgage and Housing Corporation. So you see, just simple questioning, you'll see the government responding of how great their programs are and how well they're doing and the accountability that they are taking for their own actions. And you'll just see for yourself, is this an effective way to govern or what? Just a sneak peek into what they're all about. Here you go. We'll be back right after this.
If I could move on to Ms. Gillis. In 2017, the Liberal government promised to reduce chronic homelessness by 50%. It's obviously been 6 years. How much has chronic homelessness been reduced?
Thank you for the question. Since that period of time, as we've been talking about the housing crisis, the context in Canada has changed significantly. And at this point, chronic homelessness for the last number of years has remained approximately steady at 30,000 people.
So it hasn't reduced?
It is, as I mentioned, it's remained steady given the context of the country right now with the housing crisis and the affordability issues within the country.
In 2022, the Auditor General report on chronic homelessness said that your ministry did not know whether your efforts were improving homelessness despite spending $1.36 billion between 2019 and 2021 through the Reaching Home program. I guess, you have a new Minister of Housing. What direction has the minister given you directly since that Auditor General's report? And what specifically has the minister given you?
Thank you very much for the question. That particular audit report was done mainly during COVID time, and the homeless serving sector during that time did not have the capacity to report on results. They were dedicated to saving lives and keeping people safe. Since that time, all of our reporting has caught up, and the metrics that I gave before for the first 3 years of the program have been showing tremendous results from the money that has been spent on that particular program. And of the $1.3 billion that you mentioned, 708 of that went to dedicated health services to keep people alive, like nursing, like vaccines, like masks, like social distancing, like temporary housing. So that information wasn't available when the Auditor General wrote the report because we are still in COVID times. Since then, it has all been caught up, and we are
Thanks, Ms.
publishing
Gillis. Thank you. Sorry, for people watching, we have such limited time. That's why we often have to cut short. I would respectfully push back on that response. As somebody who lives in a community whose homelessness has skyrocketed, it feels a bit insulting, to be honest with you, Ms. Gillis, to say that things have done tremendous success. I'm not finished yet. So I just don't think that that's a very compassionate or realistic approach. It feels a little bit like toxic positivity, if I'm going to be honest with you. Moving on. So we have, as of Friday, October 27th, 2023, funding streams for Reaching Home. Reaching Home has 4 regional fund streams that provide funding to communities to address local homelessness needs. Designated Communities Funding Stream, closed. Indigenous Homelessness Funding Stream, no way to apply. Rural and Remote Homelessness Funding Stream, closed. Territorial Homelessness Funding Stream, no way to apply. Ms. Gillis, how do you expect to have such a successful program when people who need this most can't even apply for it?
Thank you very much for the question. In the Reaching Home program, what we want to do is have transparency in results, and that's why I wanted to mention regarding the Auditor General's report. Now we can report on the results. We know that more is required, and that's why we're doing research programs. In the particular program, we do allocate it to community entities over a period of time, and they continue to fund these particular programs. Regarding those particular applications, I will turn to my colleague and talk about those particular closures and what's going on regarding each of those streams. Thank you.
Yeah, so because we allocate the money out to community partners, it's really at their discretion when they accept new applications, when they fully allocate all their funding. So it really would vary community by community, whether there's still funding available in any
Thank you,
given
Mr. Chair. I, again, would push back. You have people, and Ms. Bowers has talked about that. You have the missing middle right now. You have people who would never even consider being homelessness. The face of homelessness has drastically changed. And you're saying, well, these programs are closed right now. So it's, it just doesn't make any sense.
Well, I think she hit the nail on the head when she says, I just don't think it makes any sense, right? So what my experience has been through big government and their handling of different situations is it just doesn't make any sense. And then someone who's very, pessimistic says, well, it's not supposed to. It's government, right? Like I know a lot of us have had the same kind of conversation before, right? But does it have to be like that? You know what I mean? Like, does it have to be like that? It's just crazy. And then there's more. But wait, there's more. And so this is just a bit of a rundown from Andrew Scheer. He is of a political party. However, in this video, you have to know that he's a Conservative MP, former leader of the Conservatives and former House Speaker, Andrew Scheer. But so it would be a bias, and I'm saying this ahead of time because that would at least let the listener or the viewer know that this is coming from the opposition. However, he's laying out this last week in Parliament, just looking at the corruption that there was, right? Because they're the opposition. They're not in power, right now. We have a government who is in power, a coalition, NDP Liberal, and they are doing things that are even somewhat criminal. They are criminal, but they're not allowing anyone to look into their criminal activity. So you can't even say criminal, because someone will say, well, were they ever charged? Well, no, because they don't allow anyone to investigate. So they can't be charged. If you have the power to shut down, imagine you are guilty of something and you go to court and you had the power to shut down court and say, no, court's dismissed today. No trial here. Of course you would do that, because you don't want to be found guilty and pay the price for what you did. So here we have our government doing that. So anyways, we'll be back right after this.
I'm going to sum up in just a few minutes what happened in the House of Commons this week. You won't believe what Justin Trudeau tried to get away with this week. Let's break it down. First of all, you might remember the SNC-Lavalin affair. That's the one where Justin Trudeau tried to pressure his Attorney General to cut a sweetheart deal with a corporation charged with fraud. She bravely said no. Years later, the RCMP was trying to investigate. The top cop in the RCMP told Canadians that he couldn't proceed with the investigation because Justin Trudeau wouldn't release all the documents. He came to Parliament to explain why. Look what happened.
So we're here in the Standing Committee on Access to Information, Privacy and Ethics. We literally have the Commissioner for the RCMP in the room. We have a staff sergeant from the RCMP in the room. And we have these Liberals right there. The Liberal Vice Chair, Mona Fortier, just moved to adjourn the committee. These Liberals voted to shut it down. Mike Callaway, Parn Baines, hand him off, Iker Khalid, Mona Fortier. That's absolutely unacceptable. Look at them. They're very proud to cover up the corruption of Prime Minister Justin Trudeau.
They shut down a committee hearing into Justin Trudeau's blocking an investigation. This is meta cover-up. Number 2, do you remember the ArriveCan app scandal? Remember that app? That's the thing you had to plug all your information into when you were coming across the border during the pandemic. That app should have cost a few $1,000s. Instead, the cost ballooned to $54 million. Sweetheart contracts to liberal-friendly firms. Contracts paid for no work done. Let's take a look at what happened at that committee.
What I think was your description of it, and get you to confirm that I have this right. You're describing a system in which government contracts go to preferred contractors. They claim to subcontract to others who they claim did the work, and they provide reports on this. But those subcontractors might not be doing the work. They might not know they're being named. They might not even exist in some cases. And then this system allows those initial contractors to overbill taxpayers and cash in big. Is that what's going on here?
Encourage the contractors to actually do this. That is correct.
Wow. To your knowledge, how widespread is this system?
Well, if you look into today's article that Globe and Mail wrote, only the 3 contractors that we're discussing, Bottler and ArriveCan, they're the same contractors, $500 million in the past 10 years.
The Liberals paid millions of dollars in contracts to companies that didn't do any work. I had never even heard the term ghost contract before. But here's what it is. It's when a company wins a contract and then creates phony invoices for subcontractors for work that was never done. They pad up their costs so that the government pays them more and more.
Is the ArriveCan app. The matter is also under criminal investigation. It was an app we didn't need, didn't work, and was about 500 times more expensive than it should have been. Will he agree, yes or no, to cooperate with the police in the ArriveCan criminal investigation?
Well, once again, Mr. Speaker, when the Leader of the Opposition talks about dividing Canadians, he doesn't actually want to accept that over 80% of Canadians chose to get vaccinated during the pandemic, Mr. Speaker. And he continues to play divisive games. He continues to play divisive games to try and divide Canadians on a matter core to public health and public safety.
Has Justin Trudeau just crossed the line from normal Liberal corruption to cartoon supervillainy? I think it's safe to say yes.
Take that Boulderama, take that convenient smart, take that nuclear power plant. Ooh, fiddlesticks.
Now, waste and corruption is bad enough when you think about how hard you work for your paycheck and all the taxes that Justin Trudeau collects off of it. But when all that extra spending adds to inflation as well, you pay a double whammy. And this week, the Bank of Canada governor finally came clean and admitted that Justin Trudeau's deficits are driving up inflation.
When we add up the spending plans in the budgets, if all those spending plans are realized, government spending will be adding to demand more than supply is growing. And in an environment where we're trying to moderate spending and get inflation down, that's not helpful.
If only someone might have warned them that all that extra spending without economic growth to go along with it would lead to higher prices.
New cash creation constituted $303 billion of the sources of revenue of this government. Now, the Prime Minister might like to see this go on into the future. The problem is that, like all taxes, it increases costs on Canadians. That inflation is taxation without legislation.
And after years of telling Canadians that inflation would be low and temporary, they've now admitted it's here to stay. Justin Trudeau's inflation crisis isn't going away anytime soon.
All this is making underlying inflation more persistent. The combined impact of all these factors is that we now expect inflation to be about 3.5% through till about the middle of next year.
And we're actually now in a recession. We're just throwing that word around for a while, but now we're actually in a recession. They were worried to say that or whatever, but we knew that that's where this overspending in the government would lead. I used to work with the CFIB, the Canadian Federation of Independent Business, and we advocated on behalf of small businesses, which are the backbone of the Canadian economy. And this government who's in power right now do not acknowledge that one bit whatsoever. They are for the big corporations and big government and whatever. Even though you would think NDP, no, wait, they're for the workers, or the Liberals, no, they just do whatever. They're like comedians, Liberals. They're always middle of the road. They just do whatever it takes, right? They don't really take a stand other than to stand on your neck with taxes and taxing you to the point where you can't breathe anymore. That's pretty much it. And now we're in a recession, and good luck getting out of that. So as promised earlier, we said we were going to have Joel Skousen talking about the state of Israel and not just the state of Israel, but the Middle East and the conflict that's going on there. Compare what we just heard and the antics of our government and big government with just somebody who actually knows what they're talking about, with unbiased, and somebody who comes from just, a place of knowledge and not a place of puppet strings or whatever. Anyways, this is a little insight into the Middle East and what's going on from Joel Skousen. We'll be back to close it out right after this.
Thanks, Nate. It's good to be with you again. This is a very interesting war. It differs from a lot of other wars that have occurred between Israel and the Arab nations surrounding it, particularly because in the 1973 Yom Kippur War, Israel was caught napping, wasn't prepared for the assault that came upon them from the Arab nations. And they did win the war after a great deal of many losses. And a lot of people feel like this particular battle with Hamas was that they were caught napping again. In fact, the Israeli government withdrew 80% of the Gaza battalion, which was protecting all of southern Israel. 6 months prior to that, they took it to the West Bank, which did not have a particular terrorist threat. Now, this is important because it means that no matter how much sensors you have on that high security fence surrounding Gaza, making it kind of an open air prison, even, a dog can't get up to that fence without those sensors going off and alarming. But they had no rapid reaction force to even find out what was going on at the fence. They'd all been removed. And so this was really kind of an informal stand down that took place many months before, leaving the Israeli settlers relatively unprotected. And so, when you bulldoze through the fence in 15 different places and come rushing through with 1,000 troops, and it takes 6 and 7 hours, Nate, for the Israeli military to respond, claiming, we did the best we could. We got there within 6 and 7 hours. Well, why did you remove all the troops 6 months before into the West Bank? Now, you can't tell me that the Israelis did not know that Hamas was planning an attack. Not only were there exercise and military exercise within the Gaza Strip, creating feints against the fence, but, the Israelis have the most sophisticated spy network in the world in terms of infiltrating other Arab countries. They used to have top-level spies, and probably still do, within Iran, within Jordan, within Syria. I mean, we're talking top-level, up in the minister of cabinets and things that could tell them what was going on with those countries. You can't tell me that they don't have a lot of spies within Gaza itself in infiltrating clear up into Hamas. You see, the Israelis have a great many Arabs that live within Israel, and a lot of those are sympathetic to the Israeli cause, and they have been recruited as spies. And being Arabs and speaking the native tongue, they can infiltrate very easily into those other areas.
So he's making the case that Israel basically should have known what was going on there, and for all intents and purposes, definitely should have known and could have prevented everything that was going on, and doesn't know the reason for it. Right? We don't know the reason, but that is a fact. And I don't think a lot of people are talking about that in the news. And again, people are picking sides, right? So I'm on Israel's side. I'm on the Palestinian side. And it gets pretty emotional. And a lot of people are throwing around things and facts or what they believe are facts and things like that. And so I'm going to revisit this interview and continue it maybe a little bit each day, because he does pack a lot of information into one short interview. And so we will have more from Joel Skousen and talking about that. And then I'll let you know each day how you can get his newsletter, where he tells us about the world affairs. He has a newsletter called World Affairs Brief, and he breaks down the what's going on in the world for us, so that way we can understand what's happening. And he definitely, you can tell his sources. Like, he gives all of his sources. He's not from one party or another. He doesn't have any agenda. And I've been, definitely, I felt really informed over the years. And when the world was saying there's a cataclysm coming or whatever, I really relied on his in-depth insight into things that are going on, in order to keep myself from having a nervous breakdown when the media gets you whipped up into a frenzy. He's able to go back in and say, no, that actually isn't happening because of this and that and the other. And he's been right every time. So if you're interested in that, it's called World Affairs Brief. So you can go to joelskousen.com or just worldaffairsbrief.com. You can get his newsletter. But that's all the time we have for today's show. Thanks for joining us. Our first show from our new studio, and everything at least went ahead. There was a couple glitches, but we're going to continue as long as we can. Thanks for being with us, everyone. Stay tuned now for Earshot Daily on CKLU 96.7 FM. We'll be back same time, same place, God willing. Have a great and wonderful November 1st. Ciao.
This is Sudbury News Talk on the morning shift.